From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on March 24th, 2025 from South Carolina Public Radio Studios here in Columbia. On this episode of The Lede, Governor Henry McMaster has declared a state of emergency for an ongoing forest fire in Pickens County. We preview the week at the Statehouse, including a major report on the $1.8 billion accounting discrepancy, also known as a boondoggle in these parts, financial fiasco, / caper, / anything you want to put in there. We have a report from the Russ McKinney on Dr. Ed Zimmer's confirmation to lead the State Department of Public Health, which is supported by the governor, but Zimmer faces Republican opposition. Friends of the pod, Mayan Schechter and Jeffrey Collins of the Associated Press give us a vibe check as we begin our march to Sine Die, the last day of session on May 8th. Also, we have a GAVIN Open Seas Maritime Report. Gosmar. If you're out on the open seas, give us a shout. 803-563-7169. We would love to hear from you. I know we have some sailors out there that have actually communicated to us. You can call us on a sat phone. We'll take that call. We have operators standing by on the Briny Deep, Bikini Bottom. Also, another number you should be calling, 1-800-256-8535. We are still in pledge here at South Carolina Public Radio, so become a member today. I got my new sticker on the back of my Passat, so I got all my pledge stickers so people know that I support the ETV endowment. You can do the same, 800-256-8535 or scetv.org. Hit that donate button, folks, 800-256-8535 or a voicemail, 803-563-7169. There's a lot of math there. Let them know Gavin sent ya. Let's look at what's on tap this week at the Statehouse.
Okay.
The House is back and the Senate returns for week 4 of the tort reform debate. We'll give you meeting highlights in a moment, but also the Senate vs. House softball game is Tuesday evening. You might get a special recap in Saturday's podcast if you're lucky. Looking at the governor's office, the governor, House Speaker Merle Smith, and other leadership will hold a press conference on Tuesday morning rolling out an income tax plan. We'll have details on that as well. And up in Congress, well, they're back in session this week with all eyes on budget reconciliation. It keeps going. But the latest in South Carolina, Governor Henry McMaster declared a state of emergency on Saturday for the Table Rock fire in Pickens County that ignited Friday and has grown to over 300 acres and is 0% contained, according to the State Forestry Commission. Several agencies and organizations are responding to the fire, and 4 aircraft are providing aviation support, including 1 airplane surveying the fire and 2 single-engine air tankers dropping water, and a sled helicopter using a Bambi bucket to drop water. Did not know that was the name of that bucket. 0% contained. They're working their tails off up there. And as part of the executive order, there is a statewide outdoor burning ban in effect until further notice. So stop burning stuff. It's too windy, too dry. Let it wait. What we're watching this week in the Statehouse, over in the Senate, they will enter week 4 of the tort reform debate, like we said, with a contentious debate expected over joint and several liability in Section 1 of that big bill S-244. Omnibus. Expect that on Wednesday, as Tuesday is full of major committee meetings, including finance, or the report with recommendations on the Treasurer's Office and the $1.8 billion boondoggle is set to be released by Berkeley Republican Senator Larry Grooms and his subcommittee. The report is expected to include a recommendation that Republican Treasurer Curtis Loftus, who is one of 3 officials entangled in the error who has not resigned, that he be removed from office. As reported in the Statehouse Gavel, Loftus on Wednesday, through his office, released a lengthy statement on the pending report, arguing senators are trying for a, quote, power grab. Also on Tuesday, Senate Judiciary will take up the House Energy Bill H. 3309, as well as several bills targeting gangs, DUI, attempted murder, and homicide. The entire 46-member chamber is equally split between the Finance and Judiciary committees, and they are both meeting on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the Senate Education Committee meets to take up the House's Educator Assistance Act, H. 3196, and S. 269, which would allow for private security in schools. Banking and insurance will hear from several speakers on pharmacy benefit management, or PBMs, as well. Over in the House on Tuesday, a 3M subcommittee will take up the Health Agency Consolidation Bill, S2. That would create the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. A full House Judiciary meeting is set for the afternoon on Tuesday and will take up the Senate-approved fentanyl-induced homicide bill S-156, among other bills. We'll also be watching the House debate over the anti-DEI bill, H-3927. And of course, on Tuesday evening, the annual House versus Senate softball game is taking place here in Columbia. Stand by for a recap in Saturday's podcast. The House amenders are looking to maintain their dominance over the Senate filibusters, but with more young blood in the Senate, this could be their moment, folks. I've seen it before. Just kidding, the House always wins. It always makes for a nice bipartisan, bicameral moment, though, of unity. Let's just hope everyone gets their warm-ups in, get some stretches in. We don't need to tear any ACLs or anything else out there, guys. And may the best team win. We are more than halfway through the legislative session that started in mid-January, and we're marching on toward May 8th, the last day of session when the General Assembly adjourns sine die. Sine die! It's Latin. No one knows what it means without a day. Now, there is a lot to do before then, and while we have been covering the week-in, week-out moves, I caught up with some solid Statehouse reporters and friends of the pod, Maayan Schechter with South Carolina Public Radio, and the Associated Press's Jeffrey Collins on This Week in South Carolina. And I opened by talking to Jeffrey about tort reform. You guys, I know you love it.
When we left it a couple of days ago, they had reached a compromise on liquor liability, on how much insurance people have to keep, bars have to keep, that kind of thing. But it seems like it's kind of a tenuous compromise. I mean, it took days to get there. The compromise was made well into the night, like 9, 10 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the longer it goes, the more people are like, I'm not too sure about it. Like, it's one of those deals where it's a compromise that isn't necessarily solving the problem, but maybe it's a compromise that just helped both sides say, hey, we found a compromise. So, they're going to revisit this on Tuesday. There's probably going to have to be a lot more debate about it. When they left off, they had not dealt with joint and several liability, which is the biggest hurdle of all, which is, which basically is who's responsible for what in a lawsuit, how much people have to pay, do they have to pay more than they're kept responsible for? There's all these very important but very hard to understand details. So that is what they're going to take up on Tuesday. So at this point, it's kind of stay tuned. I mean, like I said, we're just kind of in a place where we're still going to have to work it out. It could be a week or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said after that Tuesday, that compromise amendment came up. They voted on it by voice vote. We don't really know where everyone was falling on that. But that was in result of Senator Stephen Goldfinch had an amendment that almost sunk the bill during one of those weeks of debate. And then, of course, they took off last week essentially to kind of work on this compromise. And now we're kind of, again, working on some bigger things. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens in the Senate and if there's enough momentum, because, again, the calendar is stacking up behind it, too.
Yes, they're going to need to take up energy, which is a big deal. They've got the budget coming up. And, you only have basically 2 months left in this session. And that's not a whole lot of time in legislative time, especially if you have any issues that take the Senate time to get through.
In addition to that, Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey told us that they want to take, a week off the floor so that the Senate Finance Committee can actually deal with the budget. So the calendar continues to get even more narrow.
Nothing happens unless there's pressure in the State House, right? But Maayan, this has been quite the debate we've been seeing, right? We've been seeing a lot of outside money come in, and we've been seeing advertisements on social media, memes, text messages. It's been an onslaught that we haven't really seen in any debate recently.
No, I have been finding it really fascinating. Some of these social media influencers, folks like Donald Trump Jr., who have been wading into this debate, a debate that is so wonky. And that's been really fascinating to just kind of see the people who are starting to feed into this entire debate in the Senate. We've seen billboards, we've seen social media memes, and obviously I think that has had perhaps some effect on some of the communication that we've seen between lawmakers. We know it's soured moods on a few occasions. And I do not see it lightening up anytime soon. I mean, I've seen some postings on social media, tying it to President Donald Trump's inauguration, things that, again, we're kind of like out of the box now as far as it comes to debates going on in the State House. But especially, as Jeffrey mentioned, we're getting into the joint several liability piece about it. I mean, this is where a lot of the trial attorneys, of course, are very, very invested, very interested in, and I don't see that lightening up at all.
Typically in the State House, especially when it's like a Republican issue or an issue that is contained within a party, or it gets the members of the party going after each other, typically the move is to persuade people. And this has been a move to denigrate people. I mean, mean, if you're, instead of trying to persuade your opponents to your side, they've been ripping into them. So that's been an interesting segment of this that's different than other debates.
And also, when we're talking about compromises, we're talking about stuff not happening in front of the cameras, we're talking about in closed doors. There's also talk about vote swapping and extracting some concessions here. So I'm wondering, when this is all said and done with S-244, if and when it makes it out of the body, who knows what else we could maybe see come to the floor in terms of bills and legislation that people said, okay, I voted for this bill, I want a hearing on, a more restrictive abortion bill, for example.
Yeah. And I think, once again, if this bill does, in fact, get to the House, it's going to be an even, for example, Senator Stephen Goldfinch talked about the blood that had spilled over this debate. I think you'll see that carry on into the House, where you have, again, a lot of members of the House, just like a lot of members of the Senate, very also invested into this bill because their line of work also overlaps with it.
And Jeffrey, when we're talking about this bill too, versus the House versus the Senate, the House did unanimously pass that bill, H 3497, which deals just with liquor liability, which has gotten so many people fired up because a lot of bars and restaurants have to carry this $1 million insurance policy in case they get sued for a drunk driving incident or something like that. And that has also priced a lot of folks out of the market in terms of insurance carriers too. But the House passed a bill, like we said, to deal with that specifically. So I'm wondering, does that become maybe more of, an insurance policy in itself to this larger, almost unwieldy S-244, which is trying to cover so many different aspects of tort reform?
I think that's a very distinct possibility. It solves what appears to be the most pressing issue, the thing that has people the most upset, which is liquor liability. I shouldn't say it solves, but at least it gets there. Mm-hmm. And if the Senate does go ahead and pass its version, this is the first year of a 2-year session, so that can just sit around and be the insurance policy into 2026 that you can use if you find out that this didn't do enough, or you need to do something different, or you need a little more time to work on things.
And there's nothing about a bill that will tame it more down than an election cycle coming up with a governor's race.
Yeah, a big statewide race. Maayan, when we're talking about the Freedom Caucus, we're talking about how we didn't see a lot of those, those social issues come into play in the budget per se. That's because a lot of them were actually happening in committees before, subcommittees before. We're talking about there's a hearing on an abortion bill. There's also a lot going on with the DEI bill in the House Education Committee, which also had a hearing this week. That bill got changed up a little bit. Tell us the latest on that.
Yeah, and I do want to mention on the budget, because this has been a hot topic, that there was money set aside to accelerate the income tax rate cut, which everybody has been paying attention to and asking about where's the plan, et cetera. Anyway, shifting to DEI, yes. So Democrats were able to take out that proviso out of the budget. But at the same time, on a different track in the House Education and Public Works Committee, there was an even broader, more expansive anti-DEI bill filed by Representative Doug Gillum, a Republican from Union. This bill went after everything. It talked about higher education, state agencies, quasi-state agencies, school districts, charter schools, local governments, et cetera. It went after DEI offices, programs, trainings. There were questions about whether it would ban Black History Month or programs that universities rely on to help get more diverse pools of candidates to be doctors, for example. But it also had another provision in it that dealt with private contracting, essentially saying that you could not do business, you could not get funding, grant funding from, say, a company or outside of the state that perhaps has a DEI program or office. And universities and state agencies said that is going to cost us millions of dollars, millions in lost funding and also in workload. It's going to take additional people just to kind of comb through all of those contracts. And so the House Education Committee went back, did what's called a strike-through insert amendment, and clawed back a lot of those provisions like the private contracting. Now, it still affects the same schools, local governments, state agencies, et cetera. You cannot have a DEI office. A lot of higher education institutions have already also clawed back their DEI offices and in some cases renamed them completely. But we spoke to members yesterday who said this would not affect things like Black History Month. This would not affect programs like Call Me Mr., a very popular program in the state to get more men in the teaching field, particularly Black men. But again, it clawed back that private contractor provision, which was really a heartburn for a lot of folks, including lawmakers. Representative Tim McGinnis, who kind of helped shepherd this, told told us that that probably would not have been a measure that he would have put in the bill himself.
Mm-hmm. So now this moves forward to the House floor. We expect debate pretty soon?
I think so. I think there's going to be a want from, frankly, both the Majority Caucus and the Freedom Caucus to put this bill up, get it done with, get it over to the Senate, which, again, we've talked about how narrow that calendar is in the Senate right now.
There's so much to do.
Remains to be seen whether they will get to this bill, but I do think that we will see before session ends the House pick this up.
Thank you to those two. You guys can watch that full interview on youtube.com/South Carolina ETV. And of course, Twisk airs every Friday at 7:30 and Sunday at 1:30. So check it out on the air. But next up, the Russ McKinney has this report on Dr. Ed Simmer's first confirmation hearing before the Senate Medical Affairs Committee on March 20th. Simmer opened his remarks by reading his 14-page statement, which addressed a lot of the misinformation out there regarding him, as well as noting the threats and vandalism he and his family have endured, all in the name of public health. Here's Russ's report.
Last week, Dr. Edward Simmer, Governor McMaster's nominee to be director of the state's newly constituted Department of Public Health, appeared before the Senate's Medical Affairs Committee, the first step in his confirmation process. Simmer directly confronted critics who've tried to make him the face of the state's response to the COVID pandemic 5 years ago, even though he wasn't even in South Carolina until 2021. In a 30-minute opening statement, Simmer addressed what he called outrageously false allegations that have been made against him.
Enemy of medical freedom. Health czar. Not a real doctor. Evil. These are just a few examples of what has been said about me, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Simmer testified that he has never supported mandating COVID vaccines, and with the information he knows now, would not have recommended schools close or students be required to wear masks.
However, it troubles me, and I take issue with individuals deliberately and knowingly spreading lies or misinformation for political gain or social media clicks, at the cost of potential harm to others. These falsehoods and lies not only impact me, they are dangerous. They erode the public's trust in our frontline healthcare workers and put the people who believe those lies and falsehoods at risk.
Simmer took head-on the criticism he's received via social media and from some conservative state lawmakers, including some newly elected senators who will vote on his confirmation. He also told of threats he and his family have received, including what he said turned out to be a fake car bomb.
But let me be also very clear. I am not intimidated, and I am not scared. No threats, no lies on social media, no smear campaign from cowards, many of whom hide behind anonymous letters and false social media identities, will ever deter me from continuing to serve the people of South Carolina to the very best of my ability.
In the first round of questioning, senators zeroed in on the COVID vaccine and the comparisons by some of Simmer to Dr. Anthony Fauci. Here are Republicans Tom Corbin of Greenville and Josh Kimbrell of Spartanburg questioning him.
In light of this uncertainty, do you think that it is wise for the Department of Public Health to promote the COVID-19 vaccine, but especially to young children and pregnant women?
The short answer, Senator, is yes, but with the very clear caveat, which I have made consistently, is you should always talk to your medical provider and work with them to determine what is best for you.
I did not agree with the way that Dr. Anthony Fauci handled the response. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think that was a heavy-handed response. And do you believe that at least your confirmation, your renomination here, is at least in part colored by how he responded to the national emergency?
Unfortunately, it probably is, and I would say that I agree with you. I disagree with some of what he did, too.
Some senators have privately indicated Simmer faces an uphill fight to be confirmed by the conservative Republican Senate. Following Thursday's initial hearing, he told reporters he's committed to winning confirmation.
I truly believe in our mission. I believe in the great work that we do. I have a wonderful team to work with. Every day I go to work, I can positively impact the lives of 5 million people.
Republican Governor McMaster is standing by Simmer. He's not a Dr. Fauci, McMaster said last week. Simmer was first appointed head of DHEC in 2021, and he was overwhelmingly confirmed by the Senate. The governor named him to be director of the new cabinet-level public health agency in January.
You can find that report and more at southcarolinapublicradio.org. And when you're there, hit that donate button. Just a little suggestion. On the way out, we have Gavin's Open Seas Maritime Report. Gosmar. SC Ports report that the Port of Charleston will increase weekly coverage from 25 to 29 calls with the addition of new carrier deployments, so more ships on the open seas. 2 of the 29 weekly services are first-in calls from Asia, including the Maersk Hapag-Lloyd and MSC ZIM, with the latter offering the fastest transit from Vietnam to the South Atlantic. 3 first-in calls from Europe, representing all major ocean carriers in the trade, support manufacturer supply chains for this key Charleston trade lane as well. That's according to the Ports Authority. Now, beginning in April, SC Ports will also offer a new direct service with Turkey and Israel. MSC's EMUSA service will provide a direct connection to Charleston for this key Eastern Mediterranean market. And SC Ports saw an 11% increase in containers handled compared to last February. This growth was largely driven by an influx of imports, reflecting a stronger month after more tempered monthly container volumes, aka importers are trying to get ahead of the tariffs and trade wars, trying to make sense of that. Also of note, the port handled 11,273 vehicles in February. That was down 28% year over year. But earlier in February, the OOCL Iris called on the Wando Welch terminal and became the largest ship to call in the Port of Charleston, supplanting CMA's CGM's Marco Polo, which first called on Wando Welch in May 2021. Now, at 52 feet, Charleston has the deepest harbor on the East Coast. You can only find it exclusively at the Port of Charleston, folks. Ships can call on port terminals anytime with no tidal restrictions. That's right. There are no curfews at the Port of Charleston. And there are widened turning basins, which allow for dual ship access simultaneously. These advantages enable ships to quickly and seamlessly access Charleston terminals, expediting logistics for shippers, this according to SC Ports. And this has been Gavin's Open Seas Maritime Report. Gosmer. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We're glad you're here, along with A.T. Shire, lead podcast producer.
Here I am.
Extraordinaire.
Tiny break. Break me off a little piece of that news cat bar.
You know, I did this whole podcast with my new tiny mic.
Oh.
Can you guys tell the difference?
Actually, Gavin, we've seen a pivot to big mic. Okay?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You sent it to me, actually.
Be on the lookout, folks. You know, everyone has the tiny mics. We're doing the tiny mic freshman interviews.
This is comically large mic.
We saw something on Instagram where now they are dragging a large.
It was like a 3 foot. It was a 3 foot long mic. It was like a foot and a half wide.
It's like carrying a golf bag, basically.
It was the size of a golf bag.
So I don't know how, but we're gonna have to get one, I guess.
Another thing's the size of a golf bag, Gavin, and that's my love for callers calling
Oh.
in. Yep. That's the size of my heart. Doctors tell me it's dangerous, but I don't care.
Mine is 52 feet deep.
Gavin, you got to see this guy the way you could turn around in his deep, deep waters. Anyway, Gavin, we got a call.
Yes.
It's broken into 2 because of a mischievous dog. Anyway, Gavin, are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
Hey, Gavin and AC. Hope y'all are doing well. This is David from Columbia. Since we're doing listener requests on questions now, I would love if we could talk to whoever the lady was from a couple years ago. We talked about gardening because I have some flowers that I want to plant, but I don't know when the last frost is going to be in Columbia. And if she has thoughts on that, I would love to hear her input. Related to that, I have some very adult good news, which is I got a new leaf blower this week. And I was so excited that I rushed home from work to use it and clean up my yard. And as I was doing it, I was just so disappointed that I am slowly turning into my father and couldn't believe that was happening. And hey, Marshall, no sir, Marshall, hold on, give me a second. Hey, David again. Sorry, my wonderful rascal of a puppy, Marshall, decided to try and eat a pillow and I had to fix that. My other thought was I'm so glad that food has returned to the wind down. And it took me a minute to call and say this, but AC, I would love to hear your hot takes on the first episode of Top Chef. I don't know what I think was a crazier decision, going to the pantry and grabbing only maple syrup, or saying, yeah, I'm going to be the one that does risotto correctly for the first time ever. But AC, I would love to hear your thoughts. And if we just turn the wind down into AT's Top Chef thoughts, I think that would be a wonderful thing. Thanks again for all y'all do, and hope you're doing well. Bye.
David, thank you for calling. I groaned when you said that last part. I think for everyone's sake, I mean, we could have a spinoff and it could just be AT talking about Top Chef.
Top Chef is so good.
And thank you for calling, David. We'll definitely reach out to Brenton. I'm pretty sure we're out of the frost zone right now.
We got to hear from an expert, though.
But
and Gavin, sadly, you're not an expert.
Well, I've been putting my plants outside, so I feel safe. I think we've gotten past that point. It's late March. We're about to be in April, but there's always the chance that there could be a late
You can have
one.
a snap. You can still have a snap.
Sure, but you can always just throw things back inside or put a little.
Yeah, move it
put a
towards the
little
house.
Blanket
put
over
it close
them.
to the house.
But also, I hope it is a electric leaf blower because my God, I hate a leaf blower. The devil's hair dryer, as they call it.
I dislike leaf blowers too. Just noise pollution. I'm glad you're happy, though.
Yes.
In the same way, I mean,
It's just like me with my stick
exactly
vacuum.
I hate vacuum machines also.
Sure.
But Gavin, what is it besides an indoor leaf blower?
Well, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. It's a sucker. It's a sucker. The suck, obviously.
It is
Gavin's blog.
You gotta read it.
And David, as far as Top Chef goes, the person who grabbed the maple syrup is Shuai Wang, who is a chef from Charleston. He owns Jackrabbit Philly and King Barbecue. I've been to both his restaurants. Cool guy. And he's actually been performing very well. And the girl who chose risotto, classic mistake. You're going to lose, and she has. There have been 2 episodes, and she's gone, and she was low-hanging fruit. But I am happy with this crop of chefs. Very good this year. Strong field, I think.
Speaking of Charleston and food, I was down in the Holy City over the weekend visiting my family. And my father who made this podcast. I was using his leaf blower on the deck. He's like, hey, go skim the pool. I was like, well, I got to blow all these leaves out of the way. Electric, though. Okay?
Electrically.
It doesn't have that.
It does.
That little engine.
It does. It's so bad.
It doesn't sound as bad. I don't hear it like from 3 blocks.
No, I'm not hearing it.
So I did that. But I went out the night before. I went to a little bar spot called Seahorse, which is right behind Chubby Fish, which everyone's obsessed with in the LA Borough, Cannonboro neighborhood, which I love in Charleston. It's right off King Street. It's a little bit tucked away, but it's fun. But we went there after I had to try and find parking on the street. Just don't even bother. Just go park in a garage and walk.
Gavin
Everything's walking distance.
He road raged into the city.
Yeah, and I came in right at 7:30, 8 o'clock, which I never do, but it was just the timing of my Saturday because I was doing all these chores because of my new vacuum cleaner. Cleaned out the car with that thing.
It's already ruining your life.
Oh, it's changing my life.
The Passat, so clean.
The Passat. And so now I get into town, we go there, and I walk past Chubby Fish, and I hadn't been there yet, but I hear good things about it. I want to go at some point.
Too busy.
And this woman, very busy. And this woman, I heard someone shouting, but I was like just one-track mind. I don't look,
He was so mad. It's beyond hangry. It's you're dealing with the traffic at Charleston.
It's my stern, resting Gavin face. And I have no time for the outside. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, I went up because the place is right behind Chubby Fish, and this woman comes up, and it's Stephanie Burt. She is a podcaster of the Southern Fork podcast.
Yes.
And she recognized me. And I mean, we're on a podcast here. You don't really see my face.
You don't see him. It's a no-see thing.
So she was like, oh my gosh, I just yelled at you. You didn't hear me. And I don't really know her, but she knew me. And I would follow her on Instagram, so I need to listen to the Southern Fork more. But I think I told her I'm meeting friends right now, but we got some room for collaboration here, Stephanie.
We're already talking Top Chef, Steph. So if you want to talk, Gavin is a budding Epicurean. I'm a food snob, if anything.
It will be the crossover people will be wanting.
Ample fertile ground, fertile from Gavin's pulp.
But I was also on the hunt for soft shell crab because we were in that season.
Softie season.
Softies are about, folks.
Yeah.
And I didn't get any. I'm a big crab guy.
Yeah. Who isn't? Crab is great.
As a Cancer.
Cancer, the star sign.
You got to get
the star sign. Let's get real here.
You got to retreat into the shell until you molt, and then you're completely vulnerable.
I think you're talking about right now, hermit crabs. If you're going
any crustacean per se,
they don't go inside. They're not turtles.
Well,
they're not turtles. Only hermit crabs do that.
Well, the crab family.
But I do think
they have a shell.
Hermit crabs very apropos for you. Just jump in here or there, hither and thither. Nimbly bimbly.
The big one big claw.
Yep. You see a good shell in the ground, a dirty can, and a half a coconut. You go, ooh,
I can move into that.
I could use that. Yeah, that's something for me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is roomy.
Anyway, people, we're the hermit crab shell for you, okay? Call us, please.
Tell us about some experiences. Did you get that free hermit crab in Myrtle Beach when you visited? Let us know what happened to it. 803-563-7169.
What is or isn't a turtle? Who knows? Who's to say? Gavin, give him the outro, please.
Thanks for calling. David, thank you for calling as well. Be like David, gives us a shout at 803-563-7169. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that as well. We're talking food. We're talking leaf blowers. We're talking soft shell crabs. Let us know what you're thinking about. And you can stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org, where you can also donate during our current pledge drive. That's right. Hit that donate button there. You will not regret it. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. The South Carolina Lead is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lead, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
Do it! Kill me! I'm Twilight Zone!
Don't even try and get me to say it.